Hello, my name is Joe, and welcome to my channel, Joe's Book and Movie Corner. Today I want to talk about The Fellowship of the Ring, Book 1. This is going to be part 1 in hopefully a series that I continue just on the entirety of Lord of the Rings. Right now I am reading The Fellowship of the Ring with Randy Ray, the Literate Texans Lone Star Book Club. And the plan is to continue reading Lord of the Rings. We'll read Two Towers in December, and then we'll read Return of the King in January. Now, first I want to give my kind of personal history of reading Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, and his other works. And then I want to mention briefly that how I feel this is a direct sequel to The Hobbit. Not the Lord of the Rings in total. Yes, obviously it's a sequel, but Book 1, this first half of The Fellowship of the Ring. I want to talk about how I feel like this, you can compare and contrast it to The Hobbit in some very interesting ways. And before I continue, please let me know in the comments. Obviously, this is the next book after The Hobbit, but do you consider it a sequel, or does it feel somehow a little bit separated to you? I think that it's this first book, the first half of The Fellowship. That's the direct sequel, and then after Book 1, the Lord of the Rings just opens up to be kind of its own thing. And I'm going to then move into looking at specific quotes from Book 1. I'm just going to go throughout the book and look at what I've underlined and take notes on, and I'll just kind of comment as I go along, and I'm going to kind of reference back The Hobbit a lot. So what is my history of reading The Lord of the Rings? So I tried reading it in high school, didn't like it, DNF'd it, and then a year ago, I read it and I loved it a lot. I read The Hobbit a long, long time ago. Recently, I reread it, and that is certainly coloring my reading this time. I read it about 4 or 5 months ago. I also read earlier this year for the very first time The Silmarillion, and I was thinking, as I was heading into this reading of The Fellowship of the Ring, that would be kind of have a big impact. And it really hasn't. I mean, it has in a small way, which I think I'll get into when I look at the quotes. But it's really The Hobbit that I'm really noticing, and I'm comparing and contrasting. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go through all my underlinings, or a few of them, and just kind of comment as I go along. So hopefully this isn't too scattered, and it should go without saying I'm going to be spoiling everything in Book 1. So if you haven't read Book 1, feel free to stop the video, come back when you've read it, and then I'll try to keep spoilers for The Lord of the Rings as a total to a very small minimum. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so my first quote that I'm picking out is from Chapter 1, and the context is that they're getting ready for Bilbo's party, and Gandalf has come to Hobbiton, and he's got his fireworks. But there was also a generous distribution of squibs, crackers, bacca-wrappers, sparklers, torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They were all superb. The art of Gandalf improved with age. So why am I calling this out? Well, it's my first kind of comparing to The Hobbit. The Hobbit, of course, it's written for a younger audience. It's very whimsical. It feels like a book of fairy tales. It's very episodic. And Tolkien, I notice in The Hobbit, he likes to make lists. And I just read a list. Of course, this is Lord of the Rings, but it's written in the style of The Hobbit. So whenever he kind of lists things off like that, it's very fun, very light. And having just read The Hobbit, this stood out to me. But I've read Lord of the Rings. I know that it's going to get a lot darker. But at this point in Chapter 1, it feels like a direct sequel to The Hobbit. Also, very quick, just depending on your edition, probably on the same page, there was a forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly. I love it when Tolkien uses alliteration. It's really great. All right, my next quote is also in Chapter 1, and it is Gandalf's eyes flashed. "It will be my turn to get angry soon," he said. "If you say that again, I shall. Then you will see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked." He took a step towards the Hobbit, and he seemed to grow tall and menacing. His shadow filled the little room. So the context here is that they're talking about the ring, and the idea is that Bilbo's going to leave everything to Frodo, including the ring. But of course, the ring has a hold on him, and Bilbo doesn't want to let it go. So we see here Tolkien is hinting at Gandalf's power. And I guess the magic system you say that the Lord of the Rings has is a low magic system. It's left kind of very mysterious. We don't know the rules. We don't know how powerful Gandalf is, and I like that a lot. I like that it's kept mysterious. Later on, as they're approaching Weathertop, they're going to see flashes, and we later find out that it's Gandalf. And later on in this chapter, Gandalf is also going to refuse the ring. So though Gandalf is powerful, we don't really know how powerful. He is afraid of the ring, and he knows that it could have some sort of power over him, and it could tempt him to be like as terrible as Sauron. Now, I'm going to get back to that point, or a similar point, when we talk about Tom Bombadil in a few chapters. Okay, this is the morning after the party, and there's other examples of lists here. I'm not going to read them all. I think you'll get the point, but I do want to call this one out. This is the next morning after the party. The hobbits rose rather later. Morning went on. People came and began, by orders, to clear away the pavilions and the tables and the chairs, and the spoons and knives and bottles and plates, and the lanterns, and the flowering shrubs and boxes, and the crumbs and cracker paper, the forgotten bags and gloves and handkerchiefs, and the uneaten food, a very small item. Then a number of other people came, without orders, Bagginses and Boffins and Bolgers, and Tooks, and other guests that lived or were staying near. So this is the end of the party, and there's kind of a sadness to this. So it's another list, echoing the writing style of The Hobbit. Now, the whimsical nature will continue. This is still just chapter 1. It's going to continue throughout book 1. But as book 1 continues, when you're reading it, you'll probably notice that it's getting darker. And this particular list, they're getting up late. It's tired. We had our big party. Bilbo's gone. And we're kind of shutting the door. We're starting to shut the door on the style of The Hobbit. And we're going to go into something darker and more epic. All right, now this next quote here, it reminds me of my own personal experience with the Silmarillion, which I find kind of fascinating. So I read the Silmarillion earlier this year, and a lot of it didn't really stick with me, to be perfectly honest. I could appreciate the Silmarillion, but it's not a novel. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. And because it's not a novel, I think a lot of it I have very, very vague and hazy memories of it. But that's kind of cool when you're reading The Lord of the Rings, because although the Silmarillion was published after Lord of the Rings, a lot of it was already kind of written, and Tolkien was already thinking of it. And so whenever you get a reference to something that I know is in the Silmarillion, I feel like the characters in The Lord of the Rings, I feel like they know, they maybe have heard the legends of thousands of years before, or maybe they've heard of things, but it just kind of reminds them of, I know this is important, I've heard of these legends, but I don't quite get the full story. That's my own personal experience. So when I find a reference to the Silmarillion, it like, there's something in the back of my head that goes, I barely almost remember that. So the quote here is, it's not a direct reference, but it's similar. That name the hobbits only knew in legends of dark past, like a shadow in the background of their memories, but it was ominous and disquieting. So the name is, if I'm not mistaken, it's Sauron, the Lord of the land, from the land of Mordor. Or no, it's Mordor what they're talking about. Though I know what Mordor is, it is similar to when we get a reference to something from the Silmarillion, like a Cimmeril. I'm like, I remember what the Cimmerils sort of are. But yeah, that's really cool. In chapter 2, it's revealed that basically Bilbo's ring, which is now in Frodo's possession, is the one ring to rule them all. He confirms that it's Sauron's ring. And of course, there's a great quote. I think there's a similar quote in the movies that is going to stand out to you if you're reading this. But the quote is basically, Frodo says, "I wish it had not have happened in my time," saying that this horrible ring is coming to a head, and there's basically war coming. And Gandalf says, "So do I," said Gandalf. And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And already, Frodo, our time is beginning to look black. So that will speak to you if you're uncertain about maybe, I don't know, world events, or even just things that are going on on a more personal level in your life. That quote will speak to you. I mean, we all go through tough times in life, whether it's a big, huge thing or whether it's small and personal. But yeah, that quote should speak to you when you get to it. And in this chapter, when we're describing how Sauron is growing power, I mean, one thing that I'm really focusing on is, yes, these characters, they're going on a epic fantasy quest. And though they are not participating in themselves in war, this is a very common idea. It's like the hobbits are going to war. So that's been on my mind as I was reading book 1. And in this chapter, I mean, the quote I just read, you can imagine characters in a more realistic, like, war novel feeling similar feelings. Here's an important quote, and it talks about kind of the nature of the ring. I mean, it's a little bit vague what the ring does with hobbits. It makes them invisible. With Gollum, it made him invisible. And they're talking about the ring with either Gollum or... Yeah, he's talking about the ring as it's in Gollum's possession or Smeagol's possession. And Gandalf says the ring had given him power according to his stature. So we can imagine... if someone like Gandalf or Aragorn or Boromir took the ring, I mean, they probably wouldn't turn them invisible. What if you had a being extremely powerful? Tom Bombadil. We'll get to that. But yeah, I think it's important to note that more powerful beings, the ring would affect them in different ways. This is a quote from chapter 3, which also, I mean, I mentioned... certain elements of this feel like a closing of the door on the Hobbit. And this is another quote. So this is in chapter 3. And Frodo is about to leave Bag End, which was previously Bilbo's home. The sun went down. Bag End seemed sad and gloomy and disheveled. Frodo wandered round the familiar rooms and saw the light of the sunset fade on the walls, and shadows crept out of the corners. It grew slowly dark indoors. Another quote with it's kind of sad, and there's, I mean, it literally talks about darkness. So it's referencing a place that we saw in The Hobbit, but it's darker, it's more mysterious, and we're leaving it behind. We're leaving it behind in what feels to be a more serious and permanent way compared to Bilbo's adventure in The Hobbit. And I'm going to probably mention this again later on, but Bilbo's adventure in The Hobbit, it's such a light and whimsical book, and it feels like fairy tales, that though Bilbo gets in danger, I never doubt that Bilbo, something very bad is going to happen to Bilbo. I never think that that's going to happen. I know that eventually he will come home. Frodo, on the other hand, reading this, I mean, I'm not going to outright spoil anything, but I don't know. This story, Frodo might not come back. I mean, and that's something that the hobbits are going to tell themselves. I mean, they are aware that we may never see the Shire again. They say that repeatedly, but they don't fully understand it. And we're jumping way, way ahead. In book 2, Frodo, he mentions some lines where he talks about how I didn't realize the danger that I was in with the Black Riders, which we haven't gotten to yet. But they have this abstract awareness of, wow, we might die, but they don't truly understand that, I think, deep down yet. This is towards the end of chapter 3. The wide world is all but you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. So the world is, the broader world is coming to the Shire. The Shire, of course, is just kind of, they're very cut off. They're very inward looking. But there's things going on in the world that sometimes you have to pay attention to. I mean, that's very much like, I mean, literally in this book, there's a war, there's wars all over, kind of Middle Earth. I mean, there's some wars that we don't even see, or some theaters of the war that we don't see. But yeah, it's sometimes you have to pay attention. There's things that are just happening in the world, and you have to be aware of them. And sometimes you have to deal with them. This is in the beginning of chapter 4. So they had just had a run-in with some elves, and I've started to see the Black Rider too. And this is a quote from Sam Gamgee. Well, here's Frodo. Do you feel any need to leave the Shire now that your wish to see them, the elves, has come true already? And Sam says, yes, sir. I don't know how to say it, but after last night, I feel different. I seem to see ahead in a kind of way. I know we are going to take a very long road into darkness, but I know I can't turn back. It isn't to see elves now, nor dragons, nor mountains that I want. I don't rightly know what I want, but I have something to do before the end, and it lies ahead, not in the Shire. I must see it through, sir, if you understand me. Again, this sounds like, they're going off to war. And another, element of the story that I'm really focusing on this read-through is, many people say, now Sam Gamgee, in this part, he's not the protagonist in at least these chapters. That's Frodo. I mean, we get Frodo's point of view more so than any other character. We kind of follow Frodo. But in the story, in the broader story, not in the novel, in the broader story, is Sam Gamgee actually the hero? That's something that I've heard before. And if you approach this with Sam as the hero, certain details pop out to you. This quote is really interesting. Of course, I'm not going to spoil it for first-time readers, but they're going to be going on a mission to destroy the ring. They're going to be going to Mordor, and of course Sam's right there along with it. So, and they don't even know at this point that they. I mean, right now they're just trying to go to. I think they're just trying to go to the new house. They're trying to just leave the Shire. They're trying to go to Frodo's new house. Then they're trying to get to Bree. Then they're trying to get to Rivendell. And at that point, that should be it. And of course, the novel is much longer than when we get to Rivendell. But so Sam knows that there's this. He doesn't fully understand maybe the danger that they're in yet, but he knows this is really, really important. And we have a lot of darkness that we're going to see. And it's going to be a long road. And like I said, I think, Sam, you could absolutely read this with, Sam maybe not being the hero of the novel, but Sam is the hero of the story, if that makes sense. And we're going to get to some other quotes. I mean, maybe I'll read them, maybe I won't. But Sam is often he's the practical one. He's very down to earth. He's very practical. I think Sean Astin's Sam is pretty good. I think he's even more down to earth and even smarter in the book, though I like Sean Astin's performance in the movie. Now, the one portrayal that I don't think is good, I love the movie, it's ultimately a flawed movie and a failed movie because there's no ending, is Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. That, even though I like the movie, that Sam Gamgee is not the Sam Gamgee of the book. I'll just... I think everyone that's read the book and seen Ralph Bakshi's movie would agree with me there. There's a repeated reference to, I'm just reading a quote from chapter 4, folk are queer up there. And that's a quote from Sam. That you hear that a lot in book 1. It's people from Hobbiton will call the other hobbits outside of Hobbiton, they're very queer. Or the hobbits and big folk in Bree, they're very queer people. Even Aragorn, I believe, says it. They're a queer folk about. So it shows that everyone is very in the Shire and around the Shire. They're very inward looking. They don't care about what's going on in the wider world. I mean, they don't even really care. The people just in the next town over are very strange. And they go in boats and they like to swim. What hobbit likes to swim? That's very queer. So yeah, it just reinforces the hobbits are they care about themselves, and that's about it. This is in chapter 5. This is a quote from Merry. And this is, again, if you imagine, like, you could imagine these characters in a World War I novel, and they're about to go to war, to fight the Great War. This seems very similar, but it's Merry talking to Frodo, and they're basically saying, no, we're all, the 4 hobbits, Merry, or Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, we're all going to stick together, and we're with you, Frodo. And he says, you can trust us to stick to you through thick and thin, to the bitter end. And you can trust us to keep any secret of yours, closer than you keep it yourself, the ring. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. So it's this great camaraderie and this great sense of friendship. They understand that they're facing danger, but do they really understand it? I don't think they do. But yeah, I really like their friendship here. Before they leave Frodo's new house, I think that's where they are. I'm kind of skipping ahead, so I might be getting a few details wrong here. But Merry and Pippin, they sing a song. And it's made on the model of the dwarf song that started Bilbo on his adventure long ago and went to the same tune. And they sing this song, and one quote I have is, "We must away ere break of day, far over wood and mountain tall." That is very similar to the song that they're referring to at the beginning of The Hobbit. It's one of my favorite moments in The Hobbit. When I read it, it gives me chills. So in The Hobbit, the dwarves sing the song, "We're going to go get our gold back from the dragon." And it works so well because right beforehand they're singing a very silly song about breaking glasses and plates as they're cleaning up Bilbo's dishes. And that scene in The Hobbit gives me chills. I love it. And this is, of course, very good, but it's important here. We're echoing The Hobbit. We're echoing Bilbo's journey, but it just seems so much more frightening, in my opinion. At the end of chapter 5, Frodo has a dream where he sees the sea. And I love this moment. Again, no spoilers for first-time readers, but this is a bit of foreshadowing. Him climbing a tower and he's seeing the sea. The sea is actually out west. And they call the western part of Middle-earth the Grey Havens. And there's repeated reference that the elves are leaving Middle-earth. They're going to the Grey Havens, and then they're going on the sea back to, I can't remember what the continent is called, but basically going across the sea out west. And so it's important that he's dreaming of the sea here. Now in chapter 6, some readers may feel that the pace is starting to slow. So they've encountered the Black Riders. The pace is starting to build up. They need to go find Gandalf. Why is Gandalf not, contacting Frodo? And we have some episodes in the Old Forest. And the first danger that they face is this willow tree that tries to eat the hobbits up. When things go wrong, it's Sam that seems to be the more practical one. Frodo kind of just loses it for a second. He just starts going, "Help, help, help." I mean, there's no one around as far as he knows. Now it just so happens that there is actually someone around, and that someone is Tom Bombadil, and that Tom Bombadil comes and saves them all. But I think it's important that Sam is the practical one trying to save Merry and Pippin, and Frodo's just kind of running around like a chicken with his head cut off. So now, of course, we have the introduction in chapter 6 of Tom Bombadil. First-time readers, again, may get to Tom Bombadil and go, what are we doing here? What's the point of chapters 6 and 7 with Tom? And again, the pace slows down. It's a good thing that he was cut out of both the Bakshi movie and the Peter Jackson movie. However, I find these chapters really, really interesting, and I like them a lot. And as they kind of meet Tom, there's a quote here. They began to feel that all this country was unreal, and that they were stumbling through an ominous dream that led to no awakening. Now, these chapters make me think of Sword and Sorcery. I haven't talked about them a lot on my channel, but I've been reading very slowly going through the Conan stories by Robert E. Howard. That's Sword and Sorcery. And this chapter, it feels like the hobbits are stepping into a Sword and Sorcery story. Now, we're not. It's epic fantasy. It's Tom Bombadil is a good character. But if this were a Robert E. Howard story, at a certain point, Tom Bombadil would turn evil. I mean, any magic user, or usually magic users in Sword and Sorcery, they're bad. So the magic is mysterious, like it is here. I mean, we don't really understand Gandalf or Sauron's or Tom Bombadil's powers. But Gandalf is good, and Tom Bombadil is good. But in Sword and Sorcery, the wizards are always bad. So even though, I know, and I've reread this, I know that Tom Bombadil, he's not evil. He's a good character. I'm like, why are these hobbits trusting this guy? This is a stranger danger here. Like, you shouldn't be trusting this man. He's creepy. And it's not just that his description might creep some people out, but it's the fact that we will learn here that he is potentially all powerful, or his level of power is so great that when they talk about the ring and Frodo gives him the ring and it has zero effect on him. He's not tempted by it. He puts it on his little pinky finger and it doesn't, like, he obviously doesn't turn invisible, but you'd expect that, if he's a powerful being, he would become evil. Like, I mean, Gandalf is worried about this happening to him. That doesn't happen at all. So he must be so powerful that the power of the ring is just a nothingness to him. What is Tom Bombadil? I don't think I've looked a little bit online. I don't think there is a good answer. It's ultimately a mystery. But yeah, it's really cool, but really, really creepy at the same time, because it feels like at any moment, like they're trusting him too much. And the moment when he holds up the ring, he holds it up to his eye, and the hobbits like get tripped out for a second. They see like this blue eye through the ring, and it's kind of like Sauron's eye. So it's kind of like an inverse of that. But yeah, it's really, really bizarre. I mean, how powerful is he? And yet he just cares about this little patch in the woods. That's it. He has no concern whatsoever about the outside world. But unlike the hobbits, the outside world is not going to affect Tom Bombadil. So what is he? I have no idea. And also, these chapters are just very dreamy and very kind of psychedelic and just bizarre and strange. It's really cool. After they leave Tom Bombadil in the Barrow Downs, it's also very strange, very creepy, and very much like a sword and sorcery story. Also, this is very episodic. I mean, book one, again, we're still echoing The Hobbit. The Hobbit it feels very episodic, but it's a lighter fairy tale tone. This is darker. I mean, in chapter 7 or 8, when they go to the Barrow Downs, they're basically fighting zombies. And yeah, again, it feels very sword and sorcery, but it's this dark echo of The Hobbit. And here's a couple quotes. Again, the mystery of Tom Bombadil. They finally ask him, "Who are you, master?" And later on, he answers, "Eldest, that's what I am." And it reminds me kind of like that scene in the Gospels. I can't remember which Gospel. When Jesus says, like, "I am who am." It's very mysterious. I think earlier on, his wife Goldberry says something similar. I can't find the quote here, but she says at one point, it's just Tom Bombadil just is. Again, who is this guy? What is this? Okay, now this is a part of this story that, again, echoing The Hobbit, but also it feels like young people going off to war, and they're starting to realize that the heroic stories and the glory of war is not the reality. So we're in the Barrow Downs chapter 8, and it's very creepy. They're like fighting zombies. The Barrow Downs, it's very bizarre. There's a mist that surrounds them. It's super creepy. Again, it feels like something out of a sword and sorcery story. And there's a moment where Frodo, so we're following Frodo, and it says, "But though his fear was so great that it seemed to be part of the very darkness that was round him, he found himself, as he lay thinking, about Bilbo Baggins and his stories, of their jogging along together in the lanes of the Shire and talking about roads and adventures." Anyway, so this mention of Bilbo, it's interesting to me. So when we read The Hobbit, I'm saying it over and over again. It's very light, very whimsical, very a lot of fun. That must be, so our experience as readers of The Hobbit, that must be what Frodo experiences when he hears Bilbo's stories. Now, yes, Bilbo faced great danger. He faced a dragon, and there was a war, a battle. But the stories are light and fun, and even when they are in great danger, it's like, well, nothing that bad's going to happen. And this adventure in the Barrow Downs, seems much more frightening than that. And Frodo is feeling dread and just horrible fear. And in this moment, he's thinking of Bilbo's stories. And it's like, man, I'm going on my adventure. And, I mean, Bilbo, though he faced danger, it was all, well, everything's going to be all right. And Frodo must be thinking here, I'm starting to realize that adventures can be very dangerous. So it reminds me of, like, young guys thinking about the glory of going off to war, and then they get to war. It's something that I've never experienced, but I can imagine, it's one of those, if you go into combat, it's one of those things where there is no way for you to, there's no way for you to understand it until you experience it. And Frodo, it's like he's experiencing war. Again, he's not literally in war. He's fighting zombies. The Barrow-wights, however you pronounce them. But yeah, I like how it brings up Bilbo's stories. But this is the dark reality of going on an adventure. It's more dangerous than he thought. Okay, in chapters 9 and 10, we basically pick up the adventure again. So if you were thinking that chapters 6, 7, and 8, all the Tom Bombadil chapters, are very slow, you're in luck. Chapter 9, the adventure continues. The Black Riders come back, and we meet Strider, who is, of course, Aragorn. And I like how Sam never really trusts Strider. He doesn't trust him for a while, not until book 2. And once again, Sam he's the smart one. He's the practical one. Like, why should you trust this guy? I feel like I would have been telling them that about Tom Bombadil, but anyway. When they're at Weathertop in chapter 11, again, Sam has a practical moment. Strider says that, well, we'll create a fire, and we'll be near a fire, and it will frighten off, or it will help ward off the Black Riders. But of course, Sam goes to himself. He's always like, a lot of the, not chapters, but a lot of kind of big scenes are ended with Sam speaking common sense, and he goes, in response to Strider and the fire, he goes, "Maybe," muttered Sam. "It is also as good a way of saying, 'Here we are,' as I can think of, bar shouting." So yeah, very down-to-earth, very smart. Here's another quote about Sam from Frodo. "I am learning a lot about Sam Gamgee on this journey. First, he was a conspirator. Now he's a jester. He'll end up by becoming a wizard. Or a warrior." So yeah, Sam's a hero. Also in this chapter, Sam, who still doesn't fully trust Strider, but it's Strider, when he's like thinking out loud his plans, it's Sam that he's not seeking Sam's advice, but he's letting Sam know this is what we're doing. So again, Sam is, he's like the real hero of this group. And at the end here of chapter 12, which will bring book 1 to a close, we get a big payoff here with the Black Riders. There's a great scene where Frodo, he's been stabbed at Weathertop, and he's very sick, and the blade is like working its way through him, and it's basically gonna eventually will turn him into a wraith. And they're at a river, and Frodo draws his sword. He has a great heroic moment where he stands down the Black Riders, and they yell to him, "Come back! Come back," they called, "to Mordor. We will take you." So this whole scene is such a great payoff. The Black Riders have been mysterious. We don't know a lot about them. We saw, so when when Frodo put the ring on at Weathertop, he sees them, and they're like white kingly figures. It's really creepy. And then the fact that they're like saying, "Come back, come back. We're going to take you to Mordor." It's a great scene, and a great way to end chapter 12 in an amazing action scene. And then it just ends on this big cliffhanger of Frodo. Yes, the Black Riders are swept away by the river, but Frodo collapses, and it's just an amazing ending to book 1 of the Lord of the Rings and this first half of the Fellowship of the Ring. So that's going to do it for me. So hopefully I made some coherent points in this video. The plan is to continue on with these videos all the way through Lord of the Rings. And I think what I'll do is I'll just, at the end of each book, I'll make a video. So once I finish the Fellowship of the Ring, I'll make a book on book 2, and then I'll make the idea is to make 4 more videos after that. But that's all for now. Thank you.